Hey, Stacey David here, and this is the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals since 1919. That's right, over 100 years building tools and still going strong. If you need tools, check them out. You won't be disappointed. All right, let's get rolling. You know, one question that we get a lot is about tools, and we talk about tools a lot. Obviously, we do a lot with Cornwell. People are always asking, what kind of tools do I need and what do I don't need? Because it's really easy to go crazy and just keep buying tools that you don't really need because they're shiny and they look good, and you're eventually going to use it, right? Not always the case. So I put together a little list here of just a basic tools that I would recommend if you're going to do stuff. First of all, let's just start. If you're just a basic car person and you're basically just doing, maintenance on your car or some, bolting on some things from time to time, doing a little bit of stuff, you need a basic toolkit. And that basic toolkit is a good assortment of sockets and wrenches, an assortment of ratchet handles and extensions. You got your pliers, your screwdrivers, your Allen wrenches, your Torx bits, all of those things that you're going to run into on a daily basis. And that's really all you need to start. That'll cover pretty much anything. But instead of just getting like 3 screwdrivers or a 40-piece set of sockets, when I'm talking about getting sockets, I'm talking about getting like your deep wells and your shallow sockets as well as your 12-point and your 6-point. Get a nice big assortment there, as much as you can get, because you'll need those. And when it comes to wrenches, I like the ones that are regular, just, combination wrenches. And I also like the ones with a ratcheting socket in them. Whatever you can afford, but try to be diverse enough to where you can actually, do a little bit of work in the shop. Now, if you're doing more than maintenance, if you're getting more into mechanical stuff, you need to start with this basic set no matter what. But then if you're doing more mechanical stuff, you'll have to start adding tools depending on what kind of mechanical things you're going to do. For example, if you're going to be building engines, then you need to invest in a torque wrench and some of the specialized tools that you will use on an engine. If you're going to be doing transmission stuff, then you need like clutch alignment tools and the special tools that you would need, messing around with transmissions. If you're going to be into the rear ends or doing brakes, then you need to get the specialty tools, so you can do brake jobs, so you can bleed brakes, so you can do those kind of things. And these are all things that you can add as your skill level, goes up. So you don't have to have all this stuff at once. That's how you can kind of add on as your skill level goes up. You just keep adding things. You start to get into interior work. And now you need some of the trim tools for releasing trim pieces and, things for taking glass out and, that kind of stuff. That's how that kind of grows. Now, if you're getting into things like body work, that's a little different than all the other things that I just named. That's kind of a thing unto itself. And so, once again, you'll need those basic tools. If you start to get into body work, you're going to need a good set of body hammers and dollies. Always you need that. And once again, a decent assortment. You don't need everything, but you need, 3 or 4 good body hammers, each with a little different tip, a little different point on the end, for different things. And then dollies, different shapes, that kind of thing. And then you can start to get into your more metalworking tools like your shrinkers, stretchers, and it's always good to have a basic shrinker stretcher. A sandbag and mallets is always a good idea to have, just for basic metal work. But then I would recommend a welder. Now, I know you're just like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought this was basic hand tools. Well, to me, a welder is a basic hand tool for a body work sort of thing. If you're working on a metal body, you're going to need to weld it. You're going to need to cut it. You're going to need to stretch things. So that's kind of one of those tools that if you're going to really get into body work, you kind of need a little 110 MIG welder. That will be probably your biggest investment. That's the one I would recommend going with. but it will actually take you into that world a lot further than just hammers and dollies will. Also, if you're going to be messing with plastic or fiberglass, then you need to invest in a plastic welder so you can weld those fascias and stuff together with plastic. And you also need to know how to work fiberglass if you're working on fiberglass cars. So if that's when I'm talking about body work, if you're a metal person, then you need this stuff to work metal. If you need fiberglass or plastic, you need the tools to work that. And once again, start simple. Start with the ones you need. A lot of times it will dictate what you need. You'll get into it and go, oh, I have a rusty spot. Now it's time for me to get a welder. And, until that time, you don't need a welder. But once you get into that kind of work, the work you're getting into will kind of dictate the tools you'll need. Now, if you're getting into something bigger, if you're getting ready to jump into a ground-up restoration or a body off or something like that, well, that's just more of what we talked about. Now you're adding a lot of things. You need, lifts to be able to lift things off. You need, jack stands. You need bigger tools. You need, floor jacks and, transmission jacks and that kind of thing. And if you don't have those, I don't recommend you jump into a ground up. You're not prepared for it yet. And I know, a lot of people will go, well, I think I can do it. I don't need all that. Well, sure you can. You can do anything. I mean, I've put motors in using tree limbs before, but I don't recommend it. You do things that you have to do in emergency stuff, but then things that you try to plan them out. So, you can paint a car with a roller too, but it'd be much better to rent a spray gun and do it right. So anyway, the prep on something like that, the ground up, that kind of thing, you can check out our restoration series that we have on Amazon Prime. We kind of go into that, not only the kind of tools that you'll need, but also the space that you're going to need. That's something that people overlook all the time. They jump into we've got a good friend who's doing a ground up on a pickup right now in a 1-bay garage. And he's not going to finish it. He just, he's got truck parts everywhere. Chassis sitting outside and, it's under a tarp. And man, after you've done a bunch of work and paint and restoration work, the last thing you want to do is roll something outside and cover it in a tarp. It just starts to deteriorate. So having the right working space is very important for bigger projects. And if you want more information on that, check out that restoration series. For those of you that are just getting started, it gives you an idea kind of what to get into. You don't have to spend a lot of money, but just, choose wisely. And a lot of these tool companies, they do have like beginner sets or pro sets and stuff where they have taken kind of the guesswork out of it to where you can buy the set for $800 or whatever, and you get all this stuff. And it's a great way to get started. That's how I first got started. Good luck to you on that. Get out there and turn some wrenches, guys. When gearheads get together, it isn't long until the subject of tools comes up. Because tools are what make all this possible. You guys know that. And car guys and girls are passionate about tools. What's good and what is bad. And that is one thing that I have to give Cornwell a lot of credit for. They'll listen to what the pros are saying about their tools and constantly make changes to build them better. That's why they have new screwdriver handles and ratchets and all kinds of other stuff coming out all the time. It's not just to get your money, which a lot of people think. It's the never-ending quest to build a better tool. Because Cornwell knows that if you're not working and getting paid, they're not getting paid. That's why they're America's oldest tool company and still going strong. Check them out. All right, we got a question here that comes from Kim, and Kim says, he says shops are always posting job openings that require experience, but I've never seen any entry-level posting for like paint and body. How do people get professional experience in this field? And should more shops hire apprentices? Well, yeah, that's a fantastic question. It's also a fantastic statement. First of all, let's deal with it from the backside up. Absolutely, other shops and shops should be hiring apprentices. It does come down to dollars and cents, obviously, and having somebody there and having enough work for them. But
Yeah, and here's the thing that I have found, and this goes clear back to when I was a kid growing up. That's how I started, is working as an apprentice in shops. And I didn't walk in answering a help needed sign on the door. I didn't have any experience. So this gets into the first part of your question. How do you get entry-level jobs, and how do you get into something, especially if you don't have any training? It's one thing to go in and say, yeah, I went to, Lincoln Tech or Wyotech, or I've worked at a body shop for the last 4 years, and you actually have a skill level. That's one thing. The other one is to go and go, I want to work at a body shop and I want to learn this skill, don't know how, can't go to school, whatever. How do you get involved in it? And I'll tell you what, one thing about any of these, especially body shops, it is very labor-oriented. So they are always looking for somebody with, number one, a good work ethic, and number two, a good attitude. And if you got those two things, you will be hired. I promise you. Now, you may not get paid very much. Obviously, you're starting out as an apprentice. I started out working for free because I just wanted, I was underage anyway. I was 13, 14 years old. But, they'd pay you with free Cokes and pizzas, and pretty soon they'd start giving you some money. And as you build a skill level, they'll start paying you for it. If they don't, then it's time to start looking for a place, that will actually pay you for at least what you're doing. Keep in mind, entry-level jobs like this, you get the grunt work. It's funny you mentioned paint and body because they're always looking for sanders, man. You can't have enough sanders. And it is the worst of the worst, but it has to be done, and it's important. Sanding fillers and primers and getting bodies straight and moving stuff like that is all part of that. So my suggestion, and this is some things that haven't changed, the way I went about this, if I saw something that I liked, a shop that I wanted to work at, I just went in and asked for a job. I encourage you to do that. But be honest, don't BS your way in. Don't come in and say you got all kinds of experience that you don't have or anything like that, because these shop guys, they're not stupid. They'll pick a liar in a second, man, and they'll call you out on it. So, if you don't know, just say, listen, I don't know. I'm here to learn. I'm willing to work. And, man, they'll put you to work. If there were more guys like that, there would be a lot more opportunities. This brings up the secondary part of this. We as an industry have to do better with this because, we do a lot with like the tech schools, the Lincoln Techs and Wyotechs and things like that, and even the local high schools. And we try to encourage people to get out there and go to the schools and learn a trade. And it doesn't take long, a year, a couple of years. It doesn't take a long time to become an electrician or a plumber or a mechanic or something like that. However, not everybody can go to school. Not everybody has access to that. Some people have to work. Some people just don't have the money to do it. So how do you get involved? And that is the way to do it. Just, be confident. The best thing you've got to sell is yourself. And like I said, if you've got a good attitude, not a know-it-all, not a jerk, and you have a good work ethic, and you're willing to give a guy a good day's work, you won't have any trouble. You'll be surprised how welcoming they'll be. It might be getting a little gruff on you, but that's how those guys are, They'll look at you and go, "What are you doing here, kid?" And you just smile and say, "I'm here to work. Show me what to do." And you'll be surprised. The next question comes from Edward, and Edward asks the loaded question, what is the best V8 engine of all time? Oh my gosh, how open of a question is that? It's a great question. It just opened up a ton of discussion because every one of you out there listening right now has just started to go through your favorite V8 engines, and every one of them are going to be different. So, Edward, to answer your question, I can't. But it really comes back to say, what do you say is best? When you say best, that's all the question right there. In other words, are you talking the one that has the best reputation, the one that builds the most power, the one that builds the most power for the cheapest amount of money, the ones that's most affordable, the one that's easiest to swap into something, the one that you just like. I mean, there's a lot that would go into deciding that something is the best. However, with that being said, I do have some favorites. I'll kind of walk through these, and you guys, I'm sure, can add to these. You may completely disagree. You may agree. And there's so many other V8s out there that people don't even know that much about that, like Honda or BMW or other people have done, racing versions and this and that. And we won't get into all of that. But obviously, the first one that comes to mind is the traditional small block Chevrolet, just because it was so accessible, it was so affordable, you could get a great amount of power out of it. It was just a great all-around engine. My personal favorites of those engines, they're from the 265 all the way up. The 327 is a special one for me. I just love the bore and stroke on a 327. They're just, especially if you're doing road racing stuff, SCCA, they just have a great sound. I just love them. And the number 327 is just awesome. Of course, there's the 350. Anytime you have the bigger cubic inches, it's hard to beat that as far as just outright power. Of course, there's the big blocks, the 427s, the 454s, those are legendary. And so those were great. In the Ford world, you kind of have the same thing. You have the small block Ford. The 289 has always been a favorite of mine. The 302 is great. Of course, the 351 Windsor is kind of the one now. Once again, the cubic inches and stuff, it's just hard to beat that engine for that original small block. And then, of course, the Mopar, the 340, my gosh, what an engine that was. And it's overlooked all the time. I'd take a 340 over 360 all the time just for the bore and stroke. However, if you want the cubic inches, you want to go the bigger one. And then, of course, the big block, especially in the Mopar world, the 440, the 383, how do you pick a favorite? The Hemi, come on. It's, and the same thing with the Fords. Now my favorite Ford big block is the 429, just because of what you could do with it. And then, of course, there's the Buicks, and good night, the Buick Grand National, the V6 with the turbo. That's not even a V8, but it runs like a V8. So as you can see, there's a lot of choices out there. And honestly, I've had good and bad of almost everything. Toyota does some great stuff. When you're looking for a V8 engine, I assume that this question is probably coming from Edward in the fact that he's probably looking to swap something into a project. That's usually when people start asking that kind of broad question. And it's really hard, especially now, if you want a newer style engine. We didn't even get into the LSs and the modern Hemis and the Coyotes. But if you want a modern engine, those three right there, Ford, Chevy, and Dodge, you can't hardly beat them. Tremendous amount of power, tremendous aftermarket supporting them. You just kind of pick your poison. You can't really go wrong with those. The only drawback, to some of these is the aftermarket. Now, most of these have quite an aftermarket following them, but obviously the Chevrolet aftermarket is massive. You can buy performance small block Chevy parts at Walmart. The more exotic the engine gets, the more rare it gets, the more it's hard to find parts, and the price goes up for the good stuff. So bear that in mind if you're getting ready to do a swap. But as far as V8 engines, they're all good, man. I love them all. All right, that wraps it up for us today. Make sure that you check out the Gears TV website. We got all kinds of cool stuff there. We got a couple new die casts coming out. Got some books coming out. We have all kinds of things going on. But the most important thing is get out there and turn some wrenches yourself. Get a project. If you don't have one, start working on it. And if you don't have tools, check out Cornwell. They can help you out there. Also, don't forget to check out Gears on Gears Nation, Amazon, Mav TV, and Motor Trend. All right, we'll see you down the road.